Hello, everyone. Welcome to Fabulous and Fearless Over 40. Today, I have Gay Hendricks, who has been a leader in relationship and body-mind transformation for over 45 years. After earning his PhD from Stanford, he served as professor of counseling psychology at the University of Colorado for over 21 years. And then, of course, has been the author of over 40 books, including 5 Wishes, and one of my favorites of all time, The Big Leap. He has also been a mystery novelist, which I love that you also do some fictional writing as well. You have co-written with your lovely wife, Conscious Loving and Conscious Loving Ever After, which is about relationship, building on some of those other experiences. And you've been on hundreds and hundreds of radio shows and TV shows, including CNN, Oprah, CNBC, just to name a few. There are probably so many. So welcome, and thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure, Kate. Great being with you. And I have some news for you on 2 of the things that you mentioned. One is that I'm just now in the creative ferment of writing the sequel to The Big Leap, which I hope to finish in March. And so I'm just chugging toward the end of that, and I'm very turned on about that. And the other thing is that I just, a couple of weeks ago, our agent sold the rights to Netflix and to Daniel Day Kim to make a series out of my mystery novels.
Oh, fun!
Yeah,
That's
Daniel
fabulous.
Day Kim is one of my favorite actors. He was on Lost and a couple of the other shows around. So he has a great new project going now, making my books into a series. So I'm very excited about that.
Well, talk about a big leap, right? You breast your upper limit problems, you don't hold back, and then amazing things happen that you 10 years ago didn't exist to even dream of, right?
I sure never dreamed of being a mystery novelist. Well, I had a flicker of it when I was a kid when I first read Sherlock Holmes, but then I forgot about it for 50 years.
Oh, I love it, though. That's so great because we're so diversified. I love it. So I can't wait to see that. Congratulations on that.
Once you get your genius turned on, you never know where it's going to take. I compare it to like flying a kite in the wind. You launch it, and then you just kind of play with it and watch it dance with the currents.
I love that you say play with it, because life is really about playing through and trying things out and learning and evolving, and it doesn't have to be painful and difficult. And that's really where we can talk about relationship. And women who are part of my audience are midlife women who perhaps have had multiple relationships or a marriage that has been tumultuous and painful and fighting and arguing. And here they are, single again, wondering, is this is what I'm going to do? Is this how it's going to be? How can I show up and have the intimacy and connection that was missing? What can you say to them who are here sitting wondering if they can break that?
Yes, well, here's the first most important thing, is that we always have the intimacy outside ourselves that we have with ourselves inside.
Wow.
And so you really have to create the intimacy yourself with yourself first. Like I remember a woman asking one time, a long time ago, when I first started working with people in relationships, she had been single for quite a long time, and she was at that place in singlehood where I think a lot of people get to, because I know I've been there myself when I was single, which is a kind of a despair settles in, like, am I doing the right thing here? Should I just hang it up completely? And so fortunately, that's just a stage you're passing through. It's not reality in any sense. But I remember telling her something that I've probably said, I don't know how many thousands of times since then, but she said, how long do I need to be alone? And what popped out of my mouth, perhaps because I just finished my book, Learning to Love Yourself, what popped out of my mouth was, you'll be alone until you can love yourself for being alone. And I felt that same thing so many times in my own feelings and my own life and my own issues, that they don't really budge until I love them as they are.
Right.
And I, to this day, that's one of the best pieces of advice I've ever given myself, which is the permission to simply be where I am. Because there was a whole bunch of my life when I kind of resisted being who I was and what I was feeling. And so to give ourselves open-hearted, open-handed permission to just be who we are and love ourselves for who we are, that really is the process that sets change in motion.
Wow. Yes. And so when we struggle a lot in our lives, or most of our lives, some people in midlife maybe had multiple long-term relationships or multiple marriages ending. And what maybe the reason for that? Are we afraid of love in some way?
Well, that's a great question, Kate. And let me answer it this way, that it's all about intention. But here's what people don't know usually about intention, because I didn't know it either for a long time. You have two kinds of intentions in you. One is you have your positive intentions toward what you want, but then based on painful experience, we get unconscious intentions that also rule the day unless we can look at them and clear them up. Like, for example, if you have a feeling down inside that you are fundamentally unlovable, what you do is you have then an unconscious intention to prove that to yourself.
Yeah.
So you have this intention to keep proving to yourself over and over again that you're unlovable. So what happens, and what I did, and what many people do, is they go out and pick people to go out with that confirm how unlovable they actually are by criticizing them or not keeping agreements with them. I remember an amazing wake-up moment of my life. This was in my pre-Kathleen years. We call Kathleen Katie around the house. So before I met Katie, which was in 1980, we're just starting our 39th year together, by the way, this month.
Congrats.
Yeah, it's very exciting. I never imagined that I would, first of all, ever be married or be a relationship expert based on my early relationships. You would not ever suspected that I would become a relationship expert after all the disasters I had in relationships in my teens and 20s. But fortunately, I woke up in time and have created this magical life with Katie for the past more than half of my life now. So we're celebrating a great anniversary this month. But here's the thing. If you have an unconscious intention to prove that you're unlovable, you'll keep picking people or situations that do that. And I remember one time where I had a girlfriend, her first name was Karen. I won't give you her last name because she's probably out there on Facebook somewhere watching all this. But she told me the most whopper lie, and I fell for it completely. She said that she was going off for the weekend to have a kind of personal meditation retreat at her dad's cabin. And while she was gone, she'd asked me to watch her cat. And so her cat jumped out the window of my apartment and disappeared out on the lawn somewhere, and I couldn't find her cat. So I tried to get hold of her, and I called her dad, and I said, does that cabin up there have a phone? Because I'd like to call Karen and find out what I should do about the cat. And he said, well, no, it doesn't, but why would you want it anyway? Karen's on the East Coast at her boyfriend's wedding. And I said, her boyfriend's family wedding. There was somebody in her boyfriend's family that was getting married. And I said, oh, there was two things there I didn't know. One, I thought I was her boyfriend. And number two, I thought she was in Mendocino, not in Maine. Anyway, so we split up, and that was one of the reasons for it. But what I had to look at was, what was my unconscious intention that picked her?
Yeah.
You know, it would be easy to blame her. Oh, she lied. And if I were sitting down at a bar, I could probably get 10 people on the bar to agree with me. Didn't she lie? You know, and they would all say, yeah, buy me another beer and tell me about it. You know, but I didn't want to do my life that way. So I asked myself, what is it in me that required that kind of experience? Right away, I saw that I'd grown up in a family where nobody really told the truth about the important things. I mean, it was just this was down in the deep South where people kind of communicate in roundabout ways. Maybe they do elsewhere too, but it was sure prevalent in my family where nobody ever talked to anybody straight. It was always, if you had a problem with Uncle Bob, you would tell Aunt Cindy, who would tell Aunt Audrey, who would tell his wife, who would tell Bob. You know, that was the way the communications worked down there. And so I realized my whole intention unconsciously was to prove that people didn't tell the truth. And so I changed that intention in myself. I said, okay, I get that. I get where that came from. And I love that part of myself. And then it didn't repeat anymore. Then I found a woman that we've had incredible honesty together for close to 40 years now. That to me is a real relationship miracle, when I can go from doing something completely one way that created pain from the time I was a teenager up until I was 30 years old, and then kind of have a wake-up moment and then create the exact opposite, the positive experience. To me, that it still seems like a miracle. And the fact that human beings can do that lets me know that we lead a life of potential miracles here on this planet.
Absolutely. So you say you decided to change that intention, but what are one or two practical ways to go about that? So here I recognize there's a pattern and I don't know how to approach changing it.
Step one, acknowledge, honor, and love yourself and accept yourself for having it. That takes one breath, but then don't stop there. Next, figure out what your clear, conscious, chosen intention is. Like, for example, instead of doing that, I'm now ready and willing to have a loving, close, honest relationship. You put in that new conscious intention, and you love yourself for having the old intention. I don't want anybody to ever blame and shame themselves for having an old unconscious intention, because most of the time we learn those things because before we can even think for ourselves. When you're a year old or 5 years old or 10 years old or whatever, but nobody wakes up in the morning and says, I think I'm going to consciously choose a life of pain and misery in my love relationship.
No.
But eventually you have to see that you're doing that and love yourself and accept yourself, but then drop in a brand new conscious intention and begin to make choices based on that. For example, if you drop in a new conscious intention like, I'm ready and willing to have a close, loving relationship with the man or woman of my dreams now. That's another breath. Then you make decisions out of that. You think, okay, today should I go down to the same old singles bar that I've been going to for the past 365 days and never finding anybody? Or should I do what I really want to do today, which is go to the library and check out a book of poetry by David White or Mary Oliver, two of my favorite poets.
Me too.
And by the way, one thing Katie and I do, and I highly recommend it, is we read poetry to each other. Like often before we go to bed at night, we'll read one of Shakespeare's sonnets to each other, or we have a whole book by the side of the bed of books that enrich marriages, and just books about poems about intimacy and love and generosity and listening and all of the things that make for a good relationship. So even if you don't have a partner, go find some of your favorite poems about relationship and just read them every night to get the tone of what you're really interested in your life. You see, because it's your body that does the manifestation work, not just this tiny little part of our brains. You can say, okay, I'm ready and willing for a close, loving relationship now. That sets the tone, but then you've got to kind of feel that in your body. And there's no better way than to read yourself a good poem about relationship. Yourself a good Mary Oliver program. Yeah.
I love that. And so we talked a little about the unconscious pieces that we're calling in those relationships. When we create these patterns and repeat and have, different same personality energies, where is that coming from? Okay, we recognize we're becoming aware that we have this unconscious thing. We're going to change the intention, but where is it seeded from? Where did that start?
Well, there are several big negative limiting beliefs that many people pick up as they're growing up. Mm-hmm. And that's the source of a lot of our problems in relationship now, is that we develop an early belief like, there's something fundamentally wrong with me. That's one of the most common beliefs that people carry around, self-esteem issues of, there's something fundamentally wrong or unlovable about me. And there's lots of places where we can pick that up growing up. But another one is, it's not safe to be me here. It's not safe to be fully who I am.
Yeah.
And, I've worked with lots of different people over the years with different issues, and not everybody, when they reveal themselves, get an applause line. Like a lesbian friend of mine told me that when she announced to her parents that she was a lesbian, her father actually keeled over,
Oh my God.
unconscious. Instead of saying, "Thank you for revealing yourself to me. I'm happy to get to know you at this deeper level. I'm happy to know the real you." Instead, something in his unconscious, she actually thought he'd had a heart attack, but he just
Wow.
passed out from a panic attack.
So we were at 2 of the 4 basic reasons why people have fundamental difficulties in life. So you talked about the first 2.
Yes, a lot of people also feel like they are, if they make a change in their lives and let in more intimacy, it's somehow being disloyal to someone in their past.
Wow.
I've worked a lot with widows and widowers in my career. In fact, one of my first counseling opportunities, and when I was still working on my PhD at Stanford, I worked on a project with a number of widows, and so working with people who had had losses. And so one of the things that they ran up against was an old belief that if I kind of let anybody love me now, it's unloyal to the people in the past, the man in the past or the woman in the past who loved me and I love so much. It's kind of like a survivor guilt. And so it doesn't have to be just with widowhood. It can be with anything. If you feel guilty about love you're letting in now because of something that happened in the past. So it's a kind of a burden that you're carrying around, a burden of the past. And so if you feel like you're burdened in some fundamental way, then it doesn't make you available to receive what's going on now. There's another thing too in relationship that I think really is important, and it's important in real life anyway, not just in relationship. It's what we call around here the fear of outshining. It's the fear that if I really let myself flourish and shine and go to my full level of magnificence, it will somehow rock the boat or challenge my relationships or make people not like me as much. And, a story I tell of an extreme example of that. I was sitting on a park bench the first time I was ever in Paris many years ago, and I was just sitting there having an espresso. It was a beautiful day, and I saw a woman come hiking across the park toward me, and then she sat down on the park bench, and I happened to notice that she had a pair of really sparkly brand new sneakers on. And I said, "New sneakers, huh?" And she said, "Yes, it's my 6th pair." And she turned out to be English speaking. And I said, "It's your 6th pair. Where did you walk from?" And she said, "Arizona." What? And it turned out that she had walked to Paris. Of course, she'd taken a plane when she got to the East Coast, but she'd walked all the way from up from the coast of Paris, and she was on her way to Portugal, where she was going to take a pilgrimage, another pilgrimage. So this was a woman who really liked to walk, and she was in her 60s. And I said, "Are you retired?" And she said, "Yes, I'm a retired school principal." And I noticed she had a wedding ring on. And I said, "Is your husband walking with you?" And she said, "No, he stayed home in Arizona. He didn't want to come." I said, "Really?" And she said, "Yep." I said to him, "This is what I want to do. I want to walk around the world. That's how I want to spend my retirement. Do you want to come?" And he said, "No, I like my favorite TV shows and that kind of thing. I don't want to go." So what happens is every month or 2, she'll fly back home and visit a little bit, and then she'll come back to where she left off and keep walking. And so by the time I saw her, she'd walked several thousand miles and was on her way to walk some more. So to me, that's a great example of how to do your life creatively, is you do your creative thing and other people do theirs, and you get together as you can. And so you don't have to always limit your creativity to fit somebody else's program. And that's a big problem, I can tell you from having worked with lots of creative people over the years, is that a lot of time people sacrifice their creativity to go along with what somebody else wants to do, or to bend their lives to somebody else, or maybe just because of internal limiting beliefs about they don't feel like they're creative. But I can tell you, most of my clients and people who come to our seminars now are people of 35, 40 and above. Sometimes we've had couples in our workshops, 75 years of age, that have been together 50 years, but still want to learn something brand new. And one of the most important things after midlife is, we say every breath you take is a choice between creativity or stagnation. And especially after 40, 50 years of age, creativity becomes an important thing, because it's not just the creativity of writing a book or composing a song or something. It's the creativity with which you go about your whole life. Are you always trying to learn new things? Are you always open to new experience? Are you willing to let life reinvent you in a new way? Those are creative things that become incredibly important as you get older in life.
I can see that being incredibly important in midlife, when women are single and they can repurpose, make a new touch point in their world for that. And then because of that creativity, they show up differently in the world, and then they draw and attract a different partner in the world. So truly tapping that creativity and how they show up every day, and is going to help them actually draw lasting love to them, if that's a desire for them, in a different and holistic and amazing, more comprehensive and beautiful way.
I completely agree. I appreciate you bringing that out. One of the things that we've learned too is, we say, a lot of people in relationship circles often give out the assignment of making a long list of what the qualities you want in a close relationship. And we've had people that have made a list of 30 or 40, and we say, don't bother with 30 or 40. Just list the 3 things you absolutely want, what we call your 3 absolute yeses, and 3 things you absolutely don't want, your absolute no's. That's really what we found is all you need to kind of get clarity about where you're going in relationship. And that's incredibly important, because most people I know, I hadn't ever really figured out until I was probably up around 30, 31 years of age, what kind of relationship I really wanted. I just kind of bounced around based on where my unconscious programming took me, until one day I said, wait a minute, what am I doing? I keep repeating the same old patterns over and over again. And so at some point, I think it's good. We have a program called Attracting Genuine Love that we teach, that is for single people. And one of the key principles in it is to make this little list of 3 absolute yeses and 3 absolute nos. So I want to make sure I give your folks, your viewers and listeners, something really practical to do.
Perfect.
And one of the things I really recommend doing is sitting down for a quiet 10 minutes or half an hour with a cup of tea or something, and just making this list of 3 things you really want, things that are really important, and 3 things that you really don't want. Like, for example, when I did that, it only took me a month to manifest my mate now of almost 40 years. And so I think it has a lot of powerful value as well as practical value. Like for me, I finally wrote down, I want a relationship where both people can be honest with each other, and it's no big deal. No, and by contrast, I don't want a relationship where people practice any kind of lies or deception or any games around communication. I want to be in a relationship where people are absolutely honest with each other. So that was my number 1. Number 2 is I want to be in a relationship where both people are willing to take responsibility for things that come up, rather than always blaming the other person. Because I'd had a bunch of relationships in my 20s where they were all about criticism, criticizing each other and blaming each other when stuff came up. But nobody ever says, here's how I'm creating this situation we're in. Here's my part of it. So I wanted to have that kind of relationship. And the third thing that was really important to me is I wanted a relationship where both people were committed to their creative path, because I was very committed. I've been a writer since I could walk, pretty much, and so I love to write. It's a daily part of my life. And even I love to write stuff that isn't stuff I get paid for writing. I enjoy writing a laundry list. It's just part of my path. But I managed to manifest a couple of relationship partners in my 20s that used to criticize me when I would go into a room by myself for 2 hours and disappear working on my stuff. So I finally realized, instead of continuing to blame them for it, maybe I'm not sufficiently committed to my own creativity. So it was another opportunity of taking responsibility for it rather than blaming other people. And so, lo and behold, a month later, I managed to find a woman who is not only wildly creative of her own, on her own self, but also she is totally supportive of my creativity. If I disappear into a room for 3 hours by myself, that's just fine with her, because she's got something she's doing too. And as a result, we spend tremendous amount of quality time with each other because we give each other space to explore our own creative passions, whatever they are. You know, she's not as much, Kathleen, as often she likes to write in smaller chunks. Like, she's published a book of poems, beautiful poems. And she, you know, co-authors my books and everything too, but I'd say her passion is more on kind of small chunks of things. Like, she puts a tremendous amount of care into things like a 1-paragraph Facebook, you know, and so she takes care with all sorts of communications that are, you know, throughout all of life. So I really respect and admire that.
I think what I love most about what you said, and I have known this from some of your other writings and works with your, with all of your relationship materials, is that one of the number one practical things that I take away from this conversation is to use one little word to change everything. And it's really just that guttural,
yes, we always say.
And thinking about what's really going on. Rather than reacting, we have that that allows us to respond in a more meaningful, intimate, honest, and accountable way with yourself and your partner.
Yes, wonder is one of the key components of creativity. So that, what is this about in me? Or, why did I happen to attract this particular experience? Or, what do I need to do to get the amount of love in my life that I want? Those are what we call wonder questions around here, because they're infinite. They have no right answer. They're full of right answers, and they just open up creativity in your mind. In fact, that's one of the things I mentioned earlier. I'm in the process of writing the sequel to The Big Leap, and there's a whole section about how to cultivate wonder in yourself.
Oh, I love it. I love it so much. I can't believe our time is wrapping up here. You have been a wonderful inspiration for me, I know for many others, and continue to do so with your lovely wife. And I want to thank you for your time today and sharing your wisdom. And if everybody just takes 1 or 2 tips here, you can change your whole mindset, your whole relationships with people, not just romantic, by just that factor. Just take that out on a spin, a stroll today, and try it out and see how it changes your perspective. Thank you so much, Gay, for joining us.
All right. Blessings to you, Kate.